Channel Red Novel Chapter 1566, Ruler of Blood. The drones were struggling to fly properly through the sky. The red clouds above were quite dense, so they moved behind the vampire settlement to film everything clearly, and instead of concentrating on Graham, all cameras were now focused on Quinn. They witnessed his new form through the camera, and many of them had similar thoughts running through their heads as they saw this. That is not a human. I don't care what you say. That thing is a monster. Is this what happens after transforming? What even is that thing? Is that what a vampire actually looks like? It's so beautiful. If I become a vampire, will I look like this? Weirdo, take your fetishes somewhere else. Quinn didn't need the system to tell him his body had evolved. He could feel the strong energy seething inside him, giving him a strange feeling he had never felt before after the many times he had evolved. This form that he was currently in, its power and strength, were similar to the time when he had borrowed Ray's power for a few moments. While the system screen was open, Quinn quickly went through the prompts to see if there were any notable changes. The first two were what he had become and his title. However, there seemed to be something up with the system. The values of his stats, the blood control, and all of his skills appeared blank. Can the system not keep up with it, or is it something else? Quinn thought. Not even his current level would show, but there were a few things that could still be seen, including the system's quests, the other titles, and what he currently was. Celestial Vampire Lord. Celestials, aren't they beings from heaven or space? Beings that are above humankind. Have I become a... Don't get ahead of yourself, boy. Ray's voice boomed in his ears. You have no clue what you can do, you have no clue if this form is something permanent either, or is it just like when I lent you my power? Those in front of you need you. Looking up, Quinn could see that the fighting had stopped, and Graham hadn't attacked any of the others and just continued to look their way. For some reason, noticing the dead bodies on the ground, Quinn wasn't angry. The energy inside him was keeping him calm, but he still remembered them, remembered the times he spent with them, and still knew what he wanted to do even if the anger from him had escaped. Jumping from his position, Quinn covered the great distance between the settlement and the battle. It was at least a kilometer away, and just before landing, he flapped his red wings that left particles of red dust each time they moved. What is that? Fex couldn't help but mumble and was hoping his sister or Vincent had an answer. I have no idea. I have never seen anything like this in any of the books before. Silver replied. Even when Laxmus transformed, he looked more like a bloodsucker, whereas Quinn seems more human, or even angelic. Everyone, leave this to me. Take the dead bodies away and head back to the settlement. Quinn ordered. When speaking out loud, even the tone of Quinn's voice had changed, and it was light, smooth, and gave everyone a strangely calming influence. At first, the others weren't sure if they should move because they were confused if they heard Quinn's voice or someone else's. Graham was beyond what any of them ever thought he would be, even if Quinn had gotten stronger and evolved. No one knew if the new Quinn was enough to match Graham in strength. The first one to move and follow the order of stepping back was Peter. He believed in Quinn, and thus he would always follow the latter's orders. I know you can beat this damn wolf, and he wouldn't even be able to lay a finger on me if he wanted to, Peter said out loud for the others to hear. There was another reason why he was so confident. As Quinn got stronger, the connection that Peter would usually feel and grow with him as he grew power was drifting further and further apart from him, but now it was gone entirely. It was as if Peter could no longer become or reach Quinn's level. Soon after, the rest started to move as well, and strangely Graham didn't say anything or do anything as they picked up the dead and moved away. Even Silver carefully used her strings, not going too close to retrieving her father's body. The others soon ran back to the settlement and started to see what they could do on those injured. You can feel it, right? Graham eventually spoke after all of them had gone. You have managed to reach a new realm. You know, I was always searching for something to go beyond the 5-spiked Dalki, and ever since I got the 6th spike, I realized something. I was different from the rest of my race. I could feel something beyond my current realm, but I didn't quite know what it was, and now I am nearly there. I can feel it. Me and you, we are more similar than you think. I got stronger, and I am now very close to reaching it, the realm of gods. The powers to control and destroy anything I wish in you, have reached the same realm as me as well, haven't you? Quinn was taking in what Graham had said. His eyes wandered around the surroundings and remembered the battle he had witnessed before. Me and you, the same. So this is why you continue to attack and hurt humans and vampires? Because you were searching for something beyond what you currently were. You are doing all this just because you can become a god. You and I are completely different. I got stronger because I had to. I grew in power to protect those that I care about and change the way people mistreat the weak, and as for you, you are killing those underneath you just because they are weak. If you had just tried searching for the demon tier beast or searching for a way to extend your life, I could understand that, but what you are doing right now, So, don't give me that crap that it's in your nature. Borden is one of you as well, and he is with us just fine. Now, knowing who you are, I believe just like the humans, there was someone controlling everything, controlling you from when you were created, putting in your mind that humans and the vampires abandoned you. It was instilled in your mind that you needed to be rid of these two races. Maybe it was Jim, but he's dead, Graham. When you took his place, you could have changed that, but did you? You didn't even care for those that were part of your race. No, you chose to continue focusing on your own goal. You are an existence that needs to be wiped out no matter what. While Quinn was speaking, the clouds above began to turn dark red in color, and then the strangest phenomenon started to ensue on the planet. It was raining, but not just any rain, it was raining red droplets of blood. The clouds poured endless blood down on the entire surface of the planet. You can't kill me anymore. You have only just reached my stage now, I am close to the next stage. I can tell that fighting you will only help me evolve into what I wish to become. So if you wish to do that, then so be it. Graham said as he opened his mouth wide and howled straight towards Quinn. Moving his wings, Quinn covered his body and blocked out the screech coming towards him. What looked like red-colored energy flew off the wings. Quinn opened his wings up again and was completely fine. That is just the power of my shout. Graham shouted, as if to show his strength. Graham, you are wrong about one thing. I am not trying to become a god, right now, I already am one. Quinn replied as his eyes began to glow red, and suddenly the blood rain slowed down and paused on the spot, with droplets still in the air. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1567, An Ancient Battle. There were multiple solar systems in the vast universe. Yet, for some reason, it was quite difficult for humans and vampires to find any other race out there that had a significant level of intelligence like themselves. In fact, nearly every solar system seemed to have something more akin to the beasts that they would find. From those, the only ones that were considered intelligent were the ones that had more of a human appearance. It begged the question multiple times: how exactly did the human race start? Regardless, drifting off into space in a spaceship of their own, they were in an unknown part, but they weren't far enough to not get a signal, and right now, all of them in the spaceship were watching the current battle that was about to take place. That Graham. I never knew he was so powerful. How did you manage to even keep him under your rule for so long? True Dream asked. He wasn't like this before, Jim replied. Graham was always special, but honestly, I didn't even know about his ability to transform. It seems like one of the files of DNA I had when making the Dalki wasn't just that of a regular human, but a werewolf. Werewolves were creatures that got stronger based on what they ate, which were usually the enemies they battled against. I feel stupid now. I thought that was some strange fetish of his, just like him liking to wear human clothes. Jim was beyond annoyed. He was the one that created these beings, and they didn't even seem thankful to him. On top of that, he was the one being tricked. If he was in the right position, Jim, at this moment, would have tried to get rid of the Dalki himself. Or perhaps I would enslave them and force the vampires to use them as a food source forever. And that damned cursed faction kid, what did he turn into? If I didn't know better, I wouldn't even recognized him as the same person. Is this something that all vampires can do? True Dream asked. Glancing at the screen, Jim was still furious, but he did have a great interest in Quinn. As someone who lived a long time, someone who studied the originals, this was something he had never seen before. I have no clue. From day one, I have had no idea with this person, but I know one thing, whatever he is right now, if he is an all-powerful being, then it means it also had to have come at a great cost. If my ability has taught me anything, it's that everything has a price. If you're asking me who will win, well, battles between werewolves and vampires used to plague us for centuries. In the end, the old generations determined that the werewolves were too big of a threat for the vampires. They healed better than us, they were physically more capable than us. They even got stronger depending on the moon and sun. There seemed to be no limit to their powers either. Wow! True Dream interrupted. It sounds like being a werewolf has a lot more benefits than being a vampire, but in the end, you guys are here, and they are not, right? Jim paused for a second. It was as if he was debating whether to reveal the truth to True Dream or not. The difference between werewolves and us vampires were our societies and our cultures, which then became the deciding factors for their fate. But anyway, what we are looking at now isn't a werewolf, but a werewolf-Dalki hybrid, which I fear is stronger than any vampire has ever lived. The raindrops of blood had frozen in place, every single raindrop could be seen clearly just staying there still. It felt like time had frozen for a second, but that hadn't happened at all, everyone was still able to move. This amount of blood control, is it even possible for the king to do this? Jean asked. No, this level of blood control is unheard of, Vincent replied. They had seen something like this happen before, but only in a smaller area or that of the settlement, the rain being still seemed to spread even further than they could see. Graham ran forward. He didn't strike the air like he had done so many times before, no, Graham knew that he would have to use the full force of his attack. In an instant, he had reached in front of Quinn. His deathly claw was already heading towards Quinn's face, but before it could reach it, blood had gathered in front of Quinn, similar to how the shadow would be used and blocked the attack head-on. The moment Graham's claw clashed against the hardened blood, the energy flowed through Quinn and the ground itself, tearing it up and throwing the land either side of Quinn up in the air. The next second after the blood had stopped the attack, it completely wrapped around Graham, consuming him whole. Quinn lifted his hand as he controlled the waves of blood, and from the rain, more blood started to cocoon Graham. It lifted Graham and slammed him into the ground. But he recovered quickly and was slashing at the blood in front of him, but his claw could do nothing as it just went through it like real blood. Knowing that it was doing nothing but now was not in a hardened form, Graham jumped back, away from Quinn. However, Quinn immediately threw a small handful of blood towards Graham, and when it hit his body, he felt a heavy thud towards him. Blood came rushing out of Graham's mouth, and even the green blood moved, mixing with the red. Once again, Quinn threw another handful of blood. When it hit Graham in the body again, everyone heard a loud bang as if a tank shell had gone off. It was clear that this was no simple attack. Did you say you and I are the same, Graham? Let me tell you something. You won't even get a chance to hit me this entire fight. Quinn claimed. You might be able to hurt me, but then why don't you try killing me? Graham shouted as he left both fists and slammed them into the ground. The force was so powerful it created a large crater going off nearly 2 kilometers in diameter. The rocks were blown away, and the force seemed so powerful that an explosion was felt from the other side of the planet. Graham's blow had traveled through, but it didn't affect Quinn because he was now in the air. He was flying with his wings, yet they weren't flapping. It looked almost as if he was floating in the air. You know why I stopped the raindrops, Graham? Because I didn't want to kill you too easily. Quinn said. Now though, one of the blood raindrops that was frozen in place started to move. It was faster than a bullet, and the second it hit Graham's body, a loud bang similar to a tank shell resounded once again, and Grahams was injured as his foot slid on the floor due to the impact. Soon though, all the raindrops started to move and headed towards Graham. Ah! Graham screamed as he slashed through the air, attempting to get rid of the raindrops, and he had hit a few, but there were far too many. Bang after bang reverberated through the battlefield as the raindrops hit him all over continuously, one after another. A trail of blood streamed from his mouth, his organs hurt, and it also heavily damaged his hard hide. Still, Quinn noticed something: the wounds that Graham was getting were being self-healed fairly quickly as well. The Dalki get stronger through their battles, and the werewolf body has incredible healing capabilities. For evolution, this body is the perfect base for the Dalki. Jin thought, watching the video. Soon, Quinn started to shape the raindrops of blood, and now he had formed them into swords. With the total amount of blood that was in the air, there had to be tens of thousands of swords of blood, now all ready to assault Graham. Moving his hand, Quinn sent all of them to Graham at once. The swords were sharp, the blood was strong, and as expected, they pierced right through Graham's strong scales and werewolf skin. Consequently, they had gone through him, hitting him from all sides, but somehow, Graham had managed to do two things. One, he was able to avoid the sword aimed at his head even if he had been cut all over the face multiple times, and the second was to stop the sword from hitting his heart and the hard claws. As for the blood dripping from his wounds, it flowed and added into Quinn's blood sword. Soon, a real blood sword formed in Quinn's hand, similar to what Arthur would use. It was created using hardened blood, and as Quinn hardened the blood, it had the same red glow as the one in his veins and wings. You think you avoided those on purpose? Quinn smiled. I usually never want to kill, not unless I have to or for my own life, but to you, I want to kill you with my own hands. Hearing this, Graham just smiled. I guess you were right, I wasn't on the same level as you, but I am now. From the top of Graham's head, something started to emerge, a spike that was larger than no other. Breaking out, all blood swords in his body shattered and fell to the ground, and the wounds on his body began to heal in front of everyone's eyes. You should have killed me when you had the dash. Quinn threw the sword from his hand, and it went right through Graham's chest and sent him skidding off into the distance. The camera couldn't even pick up what happened, and others only saw Quinn throw his sword, and in the next instant, Graham disappeared. You are still not on my level. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1568, Blood Rush. For a brief second, many thought the battle was over. They could no longer see Graham on the screen, and only Quinn was present. But, not everyone was this naive. Before Quinn's attack landed on Graham, they noticed that he had managed to turn into an 8-spiked Dalki successfully. The power for each Dalki upgrading from one spike to the next was considerable, and now they assumed it would be the same this time as well. At the same time, the look on Quinn's face said it all. His next set of actions seemed strange as his body started to float in the air. Once again, his wings didn't move so much, only slightly but not quite flapping, and the red dust that looked similar to flakes of dry blood would fall from his wings as he rose up in the air. His body is more resilient than I thought, Quinn spoke in his mind while staring off into the distance. Quinn had thrown the sword too fast for Graham to react, and by the time the latter finally noticed it, the sword had already pierced his chest. Still, as the sword pierced into his body almost instinctively reacted on its own. The muscles tensed up around the sword and halted it on the spot, not letting it go in any deeper. Although the sword had been somewhat stopped, the momentum of the attack itself has sent Graham flying backwards. His feet were skidding across the ground, breaking and destroying everything he went through. Is this vampire's full damned strength? Graham shouted. Or is it something else? It was strange how the momentum was even continuing now, but eventually Graham himself was feeling strength rise in him. From Graham's back, he sprouted a pair of Dalki wings. Around the edges along the top was black fur, similar to what was on the rest of his body. Flapping his wings, Graham countered the momentum, which decreased even further, slowing him down. Meanwhile, his body had time to take in the rest of the transformation. Clenching his claws around the sword, he instantly shattered it. Finally, he came to a halt. It was hard to pinpoint his exact location or how far he had been pushed back. At least he knew it was far because he couldn't even see the vampire settlement off in the distance anymore. His green blood was pouring from his open wound, but it started to heal up quickly, and within a few seconds, he was back to his prime, or even more powerful. Ha, ha. Graham started to laugh. This battle will bring me to where I need to be. Jumping up in the air, Graham's wings started to flap wildly, and the strong force coming from them blew the rubble that had been formed behind him due to the impact. Graham was ready for a rematch as he flew through the air and headed back in the direction he had come from. He was moving faster than he had ever before, and his body felt like it was indestructible. Eventually, Quinn saw a small dot approaching him, and he knew exactly what it was. Quinn gathered a small amount of blood and aimed towards this dot, and in the next moment, a vortex of blood beamed out from his hands. Graham crashed head-on into the blood and started swiping, chipping away the vortex as he used all his strength to get closer and closer to Quinn. Although a lot of the blood was being hit away, most of it would still hit parts of Graham's body, destroying the scales around him and causing him to bleed. At the same time, however, Graham's body was healing from all the damage the blood vortex was dealing. Lifting his other hand, Quinn created another blood vortex that spiraled from his hand and crashed into Graham. It had managed to push Graham's body back, and this time the power was too much for him. He fell to the ground and looked hurt, bleeding, but moments later, the wounds on his body were healing again. I admit, I might not have more power than you, Quinn. Graham shouted from below. But with this body of mine, I really have become a god. It is impossible to kill me, and eventually, your power will run out. So let's see who can last longer. Graham slashed his claws, and as usual, a wall of blood moved to block the attack, but flowing up from the ground itself was Graham. Quinn quickly moved out of the side and hit him with the blood again, right on his side. Blood spewed out of Graham's mouth, but it didn't seem to slow him down at all as he continued to rush forward. Eventually, the blood spiraled around Quinn's hands, creating what looked like two giant drills, and throwing his arms outward, they launched from his palm and crashed into Graham's palms, tearing them up as he blocked the drills. Graham tried to push back against it, but they were ripping every fiber in his body. This attack by Quinn right now was the same level as what he had used against Laxmus, except the blood being used was stronger and energized by Quinn's newfound power. On top of that, this time, there were two drills. However, although it looked like Graham could not do anything to get rid of the blood drills that were spinning towards him, his hands were healing, and both parties now seemed to be at a standstill. Your body is a lot harder than I thought. It just means that I will have to attack you with something that you can't heal from. Something that will finish you off in one go. The red veins that appeared over Quinn's body were no longer fading in and out. Instead, the red got only brighter and was glowing. The same was happening with Quinn's wings. Graham was still trying to deal with the blood drills as their power got weaker and weaker, but he could not move since the attack was still strong enough to suppress him. This gave Quinn the time to gather his power and show the world the power and title. The blood raindrops began to rise from the ground, adding to the dark red clouds still around the planet. All of the blood moved up, and it looked like a storm of blood was brewing. Quinn's eyeballs started to bleed as blood fell from both of his eyes down his cheeks, only to rise up once they fell and add to the blood that was being used above. Can you feel that? Feck said. His body was tingling all over. It felt like he was standing upside down as even the blood from his own body wanted to escape. I think everyone can. Layla said as she looked around. She also could feel the sword by her side as well. She hadn't activated it, yet it was even active now for some reason. What they failed to realize was that even the audience were feeling something strange. And the comments soon started to come through online. Hey, I'm feeling a tingle, and I don't think it's just from watching the video. Yeah, I feel it as well, my head is killing me. I just got a nosebleed. Is this happening with everyone? A strange phenomenon ensued, and from the clouds above, tornadoes of blood began to hit the ground. Not just one but multiple tornadoes hit in the area around Quinn, and moments later, red lightning strikes crackled through the clouds, creating deafening reverberations. The lightning had the same red glow they had seen many times during the fight, and in the center of this chaos, being untouched by everything, was Quinn. Eventually, blood began to trickle from his own mouth, nose and ears as well. Honestly, Quinn didn't know if he was feeling pain right now or not. He just knew that he needed to create an attack strong enough to get rid of Graham. Eventually, the power of the two giant red blood drills had stopped, and Graham stood on the spot as his body healed from the last attack. Now, he was finally able to take in everything that was happening around him. Graham, you will never be able to achieve your goal. You know, I have met a few gods before, and do you know what the difference is between them and us? They will never truly die, but as for you, I will never see you again. Quinn raised his hand and opened the palm of his hand in the direction of Graham. Goodbye. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1569, Betting Everything. One could only imagine what thoughts were going through Graham's head as he saw Quinn's open palm. For even him, at the level he was, could feel the blood tingling in all of his body. You really have reached a different realm above mine. Graham mumbled. I was so close, but now I will never know. Seeing everything around, the planet's land mass being destroyed by the tornadoes of blood, the red lightning strikes whose single touch perhaps could obliterate anyone. It was as if Graham knew that there was no longer anything he could do. Quinn swung his hand down so fast, and with it, from the sky itself, a giant red beam shot towards Graham. At that moment, all of the tornadoes of blood and lightning moved towards the target. The red clouds were becoming no more, and all of the blood was joining up with the single beam of attack. All of it was directed at one spot in the far distance, and as it continued to rush through, it condensed into blood-red energy. Slowly the beam from the sky stopped, and now all of the power was being held in one place. Quinn raised both of his hands. They were shaking as he struggled to control the energy that was in front of him. He slowly pushed them closer together as blood trickled down from his face, but the red glow inside his body was beginning to fade. Eventually, his wings seemed to give up, and he fell to the ground. Suddenly, the energy was growing more prominent again. Arg! Everyone heard a voice from the inside. That damned Dalki is still alive even from all of that. Fex shouted. Quinn, you have to kill him. You have to get rid of him. Continuing to use all his power, Quinn began to condense the energy. Once again, it started to form into a giant red ball that was now the size of a house. As he continued, the ball of energy got smaller and smaller. They couldn't see a figure inside the red energy, but considering that there was no Graham around, they could only guess he was inside. Come on, Quinn, you can do it. Use my power as well. Layla held out her hand. It was quite far, but she was willing to give whatever energy she could towards him. Those watching online no longer cared who or what Quinn was. If they couldn't do anything now, then at least they could cheer him on through the screen. The power continued to condense, and once again, Quinn coughed up a mouthful of blood on the ground. His foot staggered, but he didn't fall. However, his wings began to return to his body. This is bad, Vincent said, and the others glanced at him, wondering what he was talking about. I don't know what Quinn turned into, whether it was a permanent form or something temporary that he can use, but right now, it looks like he's reverting to his regular self. In the new form, sure he could handle all of that power, but right now, Quinn is no longer in that form. If he continues to handle that much blood, I'm afraid he's going to damage his own body and kill himself. What can we do? Jean asked. We can stop him. I doubt Graham is alive right now. The reason why Quinn is still condensing the blood is so it doesn't suddenly break out again, because if it does, it could kill everyone on this whole planet and the ships that are near in orbit. Other than that, we can do nothing. Hearing this, Layla had only one question to ask. If we stop him, will Quinn live? She asked. The explosion caused by the condensed blood attack wouldn't destroy the whole solar system, only get rid of all the vampires and them as well, but if Quinn would survive, Layla already knew her answer. We only made it this far because of the king. Everyone only survived because of the king. Jake declared, we have to save him. Vincent turned to the others all around him, at those who had been with Quinn from the beginning. Since it would be their lives lost, it wasn't a decision he could make on his own. However, it looked like everyone had decided as they all nodded. Order the vampires to move as far away from the planet as possible, Sam said over to Mukka. And Mukka, everything will be left to you from now on, the same goes for Megan in the Cursed faction. Owen simply made a similar call to his own Greylash faction. He was instructing them who they would follow from now on if he didn't make it. This is crazy. Owen, we can come back and get you. No. Owen shouted back. If we wait too long, then Quinn will die. If anyone deserves to live, then it's him. With the decision made, everyone was ready to rush forward under Vincent's command to stop Quinn, but before they even take the first step, stop. Quinn shouted back and turned to look at them. His eyes were glowing red, and all of them had frozen in their tracks. Is he using the influence skill on us, and it's actually strong enough to stop us all? Silver said, shocked. I have fought and have gotten stronger to freaking save you guys. To change the world. You know, I thought it was easy, that when I got to the top, it would be easy, but I realized, it isn't something a single person can do. I realized that change takes time, and I can't change this world just on my own, but I can save it. Let me save the world, save all of you, this is what I want. I don't want any of you to die. Turning around, Quinn looked back at the condensed red ball of energy that hadn't changed in size. It hadn't gotten bigger or smaller but was still as large as a house. Don't distract me. Quinn said as he cancelled his influence skill because he needed to use every ounce of power he could. Arg! He screamed, pushing his hands closer together, and the ball in the distance could be seen getting smaller and smaller. However, now, blood even began to flow out from his skin. It was as if the blood inside his body was under so much pressure that it had managed to burst through his skin. The blood fell on the surface, but Quinn didn't step back. It was now, or never. No. Quinn. You can't do this, no. Layla screamed so loud she felt like her own throat was bleeding. She tried to rush over, but Peter quickly pulled her back, pushing her to the ground. Quinn told us to stay back. Peter shouted at them all. No matter what, no one is going over to him. I will follow his will no matter what. Even if that means I have to use force. Some looked like they were going to attempt to go past and around Quinn, but getting past Peter would be a mammoth of a task. However, all of this didn't matter now. The ball had gotten smaller now and continued to shrink, more blood poured out from Quinn, and eventually, the ball was now the same size as a tennis ball. There was no sign of Graham anymore, not a single bone, blood or anything. Quinn had destroyed everything of him, and finally, he had placed his two hands together. The ball of red energy had finished condensing and took a solid form as it fell and rolled on the ground. It was no longer glowing bright red and looked like a crystal almost entirely black, but a slight tint of red. At the same time, though, Quinn had fallen to the ground as well. The others, seeing this, rushed towards him, but the vampires already knew. They knew as they approached him there was something seriously wrong because none of them, not one of them, could sense or hear any heartbeat. Channel Red Novel Chapter 1570, The Final Breath. The large group that had remained on the Daisy planet stood around Quinn. They had left the bodies of the other dead to rush and save the one they deemed the most important of them all. As stated before, each of them agreed that if anyone needed to survive this battle, to survive this war, because they had worked harder than anyone else, it would be Quinn. As the group stood around him, two of them approached Quinn on the ground. Vincent was the first to arrive, along with Logan. The two of them quickly got to work, as Logan had used his spiders to create a strange device around his body, and they formed something like a chest piece over himself. The chest piece started to compress when the spiders finally formed, beating hard in the specific chest area. The special device worked like a compression unit, simulating a heartbeat, although a regular heartbeat rather than a vampire's. "How is he?" Owen eventually asked. Hearing this question, Logan, who seemed to be one who showed a lack of emotions, lifted his head and looked at all of those around him. Eventually, he couldn't look at their faces anymore and decided to squint and concentrate on Quinn instead. "I'll be honest. I'm just doing whatever I can, whatever little I think I can to help him. Although I'm not a doctor, the technology that I can create and use can be comparable to any top doctor. Right now, this device is acting as if his body is brain dead. If the machine can simulate signs of life, maybe we can do something," Logan explained. "I'm sure you all know, I'm sure you can tell by the fact that I'm using this, right now, Dennis placed his hand on Logan's shoulder, stopping the latter from finishing his words, at least not until they confirmed everything. "See what you did?" Layla shouted, turning to her side and grabbing Peter by his shirt, "Because you didn't let us stop him, because of you, now he's dead, I should." "You should do what?" Peter said as he *quickly twisted Layla's hand, who was entirely overwhelmed by his mistake. "Layla, you think just because you are a girl that you cared for him more than King did?" Peter shouted back. "He saved my life at the military academy, he saved my life when the Dalki attacked me, and he's been freaking saving our lives this whole damn time. If he tells me to let him do as he wishes, the person who did all of this for us, then I'm going to do what he says." While the two were arguing, Vincent had called over Katori. She was pretty tired, having used her powers on mostly healing Gordon, Peter and Vincent himself, but of course, she knew she had to try her best to mend the injuries on Quinn. Her hands were lighting up all over Quinn's body, but nothing was changing, neither the wounds on his body nor his long hair. Quinn's state remained the same, something Katori had never experienced before. "Wait, I still might have some Dalki blood, maybe it can help, and let's give him some human blood too," Feck said as he pulled out his flask. He still had some of One Horn's blood with him, which he hadn't used in the war. He knew fighting against Graham that it was useless for him to use One Horn's blood, and at the same time, the Dalki blood, especially one of a high tier, seemed to work better than human blood. They poured the green blood into Quinn's mouth after opening it a little by pulling the chin. It hurt the others to see the look on Quinn's face, covered with blood all over, and just showed that they had to continue to do whatever they could to save him. The green blood quickly went into Quinn's mouth as they all waited to see if there was any reaction at all. Yet, there was nothing other than Logan's machine that continued to beat. After that, Owen cut his hand, allowing for his own blood to be used since he was a human for Quinn to feed off. The cut he made on his palm was quite deep because whatever the amount of blood that Quinn needed, Owen was happy to give it to him. Yet, still, there was no reaction whatsoever. A few of them even had their eyes moistened as tears streamed down their cheeks. The cameras slowly descended, aiming to catch everything that was transpiring on the group, mainly the unsuccessful attempts of everyone to try and bring Quinn back. Watching it on screen, Bonnie couldn't help herself as her whole heart poured out. "Are you all satisfied now?" she shouted. "You called him a monster, you called him all sorts of names, but did you know, Quinn, he was just a kid, he had only just finished military training, and the weight of everything, the weight of the whole world was always on his shoulders, yet he never chose to give up. Are you satisfied now?" she screamed at the live stream. The viewers who took a back seat while the whole war was going on, at the moment they all felt guilty. Guilty for their opinion on Quinn. They recalled when he had taken over the other beast planets and how they thought he was doing it for his own gain. Some people said the cursed faction was good, supplying all the planets with those they needed. Still, many didn't believe them, but witnessing today's events and hearing what Quinn had said to the others in his final moments, how he wanted to protect everyone, he had changed all of their minds. A human turned vampire, I guess he really did just care about everyone after all. A user commented. F in the chat to pay your respects. May he rest in peace. We need to remember him forever. We need to have a ceremony, it's because of him this whole war has ended. R.I.P. Quinn, I still can't believe it. This whole thing, it feels like a dream. Is the war really over? Did we just see the last battle against the Dalki? Quinn. Take my blood, please. Bring him back. He changed a lot of people, he saved us all. Void said as he tried to show Bonnie the screen, but she just pushed it away. Does it really matter now? Bonnie replied, wiping her face. He can't even see what they have said. He won't even be able to see the world he tried to save, and there's none of his family left. We can't even try to make up for what he has done. But there are the vampires, those that he really cared about. Void said. The war might be over, but our job is not done. Remember what Quinn said in his final moments. One of his dreams was to change the world. He was able to save it, but he might never be able to see it change into a better place. We need to make sure, through our reporting, by spreading his wishes, that the whole world gets to hear his message and move on to become something better. Sniffing up what she could, Bonnie was left there still crying, but she knew Void was right. Since nothing seemed to be working, Vincent decided to lift him off the ground. You weren't meant to die before me, you idiot. Vincent smiled. Did you bring me back so that I could be the one to bury you? You gave me the hardest job of them all, do you know that? Looking ahead, the settlement, although the battle destroyed most of the king's castle and the perimeter walls, some places managed to remain intact. They had fortified the burial ground, so Vincent hoped it was all okay. The least they could do was bury Quinn's body. As he started to walk, the rest followed until... Vincent, your chest. Logan pointed out. It's glowing, the nest crystal is glowing. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.